human capital, every company says, is the most valuable asset. But the question here comes up, are we really living that? Yeah. So we have quite a lot of challenges. It's a dynamic and complex environment, and we face skills gaps and health and safety risks, retention and motivation issues, and we have, of course, a lot of compliance sustainability standards. Today, we're talking about navigating human capital challenges in shipping with technology-driven services. Now, when I tried to prepare for it and asked my new friend ChatGPT, he said, "This is an interesting and relevant question for the shipping industry, which faces many human capital challenges such as talent shortage, skill gap, employee management, well-being, and retention." Well, that we already knew, but now we have to break it down. What are technology-driven services in our environment? So I think for once we look at data analytics and insights, because we have to look at informing about the human capital strategy and decisions and workforce planning, talent acquisitions, performance management, learning and development is important, and diversity and inclusion, of course. We have to drive digitalization. This is a very dangerous word because it's not digitization. You know, digitization is basically bringing paper into an Excel sheet. But digitalization is have meaningful, smart solutions that make our life easier, more efficient, cheaper, or brings us forward, right? Then one big problem in our industry, we have to try to dare transparency. It's something that was never there in this industry, but digitalization brings that about. We open up, we collaborate, we share data, we talk about data ownership, and especially for the ship management part, transparency was never really well regarded, but now the clients clearly ask for it, and it will be a competitive advantage. We have a movement into cloud-based solutions, especially HR solutions, which make things much more easy around our subjects and more safe. But it's still, when I talk to Johan, not very well distributed, and we'll talk about that later. Then we have digital platforms and tools, something very helpful in many different aspects, and we will mention some of them. It's the natural enemy of IT department, but basically very hard to stop, and it will drive collaboration and communication and empowerment, which is very important. Now, the next area of real concern is how to attract seafarers to the profession. And as a first thing, and thanks also for your efforts here, we have to raise awareness of the importance and benefits of seafaring as a career choice, and especially among young people and also women. We will certainly talk about that later. And we need to find out how to attract the Gen Z to our trade, and how get people that are proficient in data analytics and other digital areas, which was never a shipping trade. How do we get them to an industry that's not perceived as being sexy? Now, on the same token, we need to provide adequate training and education and certification opportunities for seafarers, and that is both online and offline. And the challenge is to keep up with the technological changes and challenges in industry. And so this is where OTG can give us some insights, of course. Very important, of course, is fair treatment and decent working conditions and social protection, which will also help to recruit them at the end of the day. We all do remember the very pitiful situation in most parts of the world during COVID-19, where they all now sit there and pat their backs. But the reality of things was that every ship owner and manager was really close to being desperate. And the treatment of the people was, to call it carefully, very dismal. I'm aware of a tug operator in Singapore where the people were not allowed to get off a tug, and you can imagine living conditions, for more than 12 months. And everybody thought it was normal. So that would, of course, mean seafarer welfare. It includes mental health support and access to communication, entertainment, and opportunities for shore leave and recreation. Now, what is also changing, of course, is the skill set that is needed for a seafarer. That is also changing with the digitalization that we're going to be talking about. And that's a mixture of hard skills like general IT systems and networking. Not many people on board, not the electrical engineer on board is not trained to be a server operator, right? But I think we will need, if we can't get an additional person in the manning system, we will need to retrain people to be able to do that, because it will in the future be important to execute these important operational challenges. And then, of course, soft skills. Emotional intelligence, quite important with a diverse group of people on board. Communication, critical thinking, problem solving, teamwork, leadership, resilience and creativity. But of course, this is even more important if we are using our people on board, as we should, and really make them part of the operational and decision-making process. And we can do so with the right system and technical support. So we heard many times today, also in other panels, that data is the new gold, but we also know that sourcing and retention of the crew is goldener, I would say, because if that doesn't happen, it is a real challenge. And when you talk to crewing managers, you would also see that the so far very popular nations that produce seafarers basically are not bringing out the numbers that we need anymore in the future. And so we have to look into new sources, and that is for crewing managers, of course, not so easy. And that does not include the motivation for Generation Z that maybe do not like to have a life as a seafarer anymore. And not to forget that after COVID, we have also lost a lot of dear colleagues that basically didn't want to take the pressure anymore and put family over work. So how do we keep crew happy and motivated? One interesting observation is it is not depending on size. Yeah? When I look at very large organizations, they tend to be impersonal. So one of my own experience was when I spoke to small ship owners, 3 or 5 vessels, right? They knew their captains and their chief engineers for the last 15 or 20 years. They would never change jobs. Retention was never an issue for them. Yeah, the owner was the godfather of the captain's kids and so on. And I think it's a perfect example how personal our business must be. And for a big organization, the question is how can we personalize such services so that we have similar benefits in retention, really. Yeah. So we need the right tools and best practices that we agree on. And of course, we need a motivated and trained crew that will then help to maintain the assets. There's also a lot of people, they say, oh, autonomous vessels will come in, and then the need for seafarers will be much lower. The figures today show a different picture, and even though there are present use cases for autonomous vessels, we will still need a greater number of seafarers for the longest time. I would say. Another thing is, of course, safety. Something that really puzzles me. I've been around in a lot of conferences, and we talk about new fuels and things like that. And if I look at, other than the green element in these discussions, at the dangers that our seafarers would face based on being exposed to poison and things like that, that is something that I think we are underestimating at this moment. We have to expand that view and making sure that these guys are safe. And one part is, of course, preparing them for that. I do not think that we are far enough into this. I do hear that so-called shorefaring will also probably impact the recruitment market, so which in principle is having operation centers on shore, executing central jobs around the vessel operations. However, I do not think that the industry at this moment is really ready to give up true executional powers to such centers. I have not seen some, even though they were operating 24/7, which was difficult during COVID as well. We are such a captain-driven, very traditional way of decision making, so that this first line of response is not really utilized very well. So until that comes into play, I think it will come, but it will change. It will require a change in operation models, and I'm not very sure how long that will take. Digital tools will make our life much easier, and we have already some working ideas. Digital twins are being used. We use CCTVs for very smart applications on board. We have VR technology for immersive training. We have 3D printing. These are all things that kind of step by step enable us to believe in the digital transformation. I read very carefully the Seafarer Happiness Index. It is really a good guide also when you not only read it once, but every quarter and see how things develop. I'm quite sure most of you are aware of the Seafarer Happiness Index. It's the mission to seafarers that's doing them, and we can see what is really driving the motivation to be part of the seafarer community. There's a few things that are always being mentioned. I want to say it again. Shocking is corrupt practices for seafarer recruitment. There's still things around the onboarding process which is shocking, very prevalent in some countries where people that are looking for jobs are forced to pay certain fees. That I find, of course, extremely unnerving. And we also have still the issue that the times on board are not as per contract. But interestingly, if you look at the Seafarer Happiness Report, where we would think that seafarers would be mostly driven by money, the actual first priority that leads to better retention is connectivity. And that came to me a little bit as a surprise. So, but it's also part of the trauma that people came from in the COVID times, right? And then if you then think it's money, no, the second part is actually shore leave. And being able to really execute your contracts in real time and spend time with your family after that. So I thought that was quite interesting. A lot of the seafarers were even commenting that one of the worries that they have is that health on board, which quite often is linked to catering and nutrition and so on, is an issue which I find very unsettling in the sense that when owners or managers save on a couple of cents per month for the catering budget, where this is one of the very few pleasures they have, this is completely wrong. We even heard of cases where not enough drinking water was available on board. So these are things that should really trouble us, and where, as an industry, we should work against it. And if we do not have regulatory help here, we should come together and say, look, this is absolutely not acceptable. There's also, interestingly, a perception that there's a lack of training and drills on board, and that there's a big gap between what an owner or manager is facing as regulatory training, that this is not perceived as being really helpful for them to get better and be in a safer environment and get more efficient. So that gap we have to fill somehow. And also, again, we have to use the industry and opportunities to address this issue. On the connectivity side, of course, we have a few disruptive elements at this moment. Most of you have heard of Starlink, for example, that are coming into the market, and all of a sudden giving crew much more access to affordable connectivity. That is already perceived a little bit as a game changer, and I think with this we see a little bit more happiness going forward. Fitness and health on board is, of course, another very important issue, and if this is not addressed properly, also the issue of psychological support, the issue of access to consulting and so on is something that most companies should spend a bit more time. And I think also with OTG we're discussing on how to complete the scope of services for the owners. So there's a more holistic approach and dialogue with the crew necessary to understand what they really need and want. So what we take away is there's a lack of practical relevance in the training process. Only compliance is not good enough. There's also an issue which is perceived that the crew in the training process doesn't have enough time on board. It's not freed up to have meaningful training programs. And I think this is also something that each and every company has to work on to make sure that this is not going on top of already very stretched schedules. And we can only assume that the pressure also during port calls on the crew is only increasing, is not getting better from what we hear from the vessels.